Hello and welcome to another Dominion 6 Quick Tips. In this episode we'll be going over fortifications, what bonuses they provide and what to consider when placing them. So, fortifications obviously have a defensive bonus. The province they are situated in cannot be fully taken over by an enemy army before they storm the fortress itself. Forts cannot be stormed until the walls of the forts have been breached by reducing the wall integrity to 0 hit points. Should an enemy army move onto your fort and then leave it, you will automatically regain control of the full province. This also means that any temples you have inside a province with a fort cannot be raised by the enemy units until they take the fortification. Every fort, in addition, will have some defenders as well, which you can see by clicking on the fortification. Some of these will be ranged units, such as these crossbowmen, and they will sit atop the castle wall. Walls give your units on top of them unlimited ammunition, plus 20% range, and it provides an additional defense against ranged attacks for those on the wall, which kind of works like a shield would. If the ranged units also have shields, then the better shield between the wall and the units is chosen for use against ranged attacks. You will also be given some gate defenders, such as these pikeneers. These are unique in Dominions, as they will sit in front of the gate and not move past it, unlike your usual squads which can only hold for a maximum of 2 turns. For economic benefits, forts also provide an administration level depending on their type and level of the fortification. We can see that these palisades give an administration of 15. This administration level is used to calculate the fort's administrative bonus by taking it as a percentage. A fort will increase the income in the province it is in based on its admin bonus divided by 2. So we can see that these palisades will increase the income in this province by about 7.5%. Forts will also draw in resources from connected province based on its admin bonus times the total resource potential of these connected provinces. Forts cannot take resources from enemy provinces, other forts, and a land fort cannot take resources from sea provinces, and vice versa. If you want to know more about this, have a look at my resources overview as another quick tip, which I will link up above. Forts will also propagate supplies into provinces up to 4 connections away depending on its admin bonus level. The amount of supplies is determined by its admin bonus times 6 divided by the total of the distance between the provinces plus 1. As for recruitment, some forts additional recruitment points for the province they are in for normal troops. Higher level forts will also give additional commander recruitment points per turn. Building a fort in a province will also allow that province to access your national recruitment pool, so you can build any of the national units that are not tied to a specific site in that province. Forts also provide a safe place for your troops, commanders, and mages to gather. Units will not fight outside the fortification unless they are under the patrol command, meaning that you can safely build laboratories inside them for a research hub, and also to outfit your commanders with gems, magical items, and troops to get them ready for the next campaign. So that's a nitty-gritty overview about forts. A common question I've been asked is, where do I put them? Now that is a good question, but it is very game specific. So I've tried to get a list together of the kinds of fortifications you want to build and what you kind of want to look for in your game. Firstly, I'd like to say not to put forts directly next to each other, because forts cannot draw resources from each other, and if their combined administration bonus is over 100%, this will prevent recruitment from provinces connected to both, like we can see in Hamain, which has 0 resources. This is not the case for nations that do not recruit from forts, like Middle Age Armor for example, or for a specific kind of fort, which we'll go over in a second. Okay, so what are the different types of forts that you have in Dominion 6? In my mind there are a few. Defensive forts, recruitment forts, income forts, and mage forts. Quite a few times the location of your fort will fulfill more than one criteria, in which case great, that's less money you have to put in your infrastructure for better rewards. So, defensive forts are forts built to increase your hold on an area. They're usually built in a location that has natural choke points, such as rivers or mountains, that limit an enemy's ability to move into your lands. This will mean that for most normal land-based troops, they will not be able to circumnavigate around your fort, so you can limit your enemy's ability to access your territory. They're also useful for wars, as your enemy cannot ignore them, unless they want you to have the ability to launch magical rituals and counterattacks from it while their armies pass through your lands. So they will have to siege and then storm the fort, potentially slowing down their initial tempo in a war. You can also make this harder for the enemy by building certain terrain, like wastes for example, or swamps. This means they have to be adequately prepared in terms of supply in order to siege this fort down. Though with the ease that supply items can be created, don't rely on this purely. If you really want to recreate the Maginot Line, you could put these forts next to each other. Just be sure to consider the fact that individually they will not be as good for recruiting units. Another good place for defensive forts is on top of thrones of ascension. These will always be worth it to prevent the enemy from easily capturing your thrones. Recruitment forts are placed to maximise the recruitment of troops from a province. You want to have high resources in and around the province with a lot of connections if possible, and a good population base to have enough recruitment points. These forts will pump out troops for your armies as your main force, and then to defend your mage corps as the game progresses. Income forts are built purely for income. You may want to consider these in a subpar recruitment province with not many resources or few connections, but has a huge population in it with high income. A farmland with rivers comes to mind, like we have in Glanis. Here you want to build your fort not to produce a lot of units from it, but rather to increase the amount of gold you collect from the province as built in, and to prevent the enemy from easily cutting off your income through stealthy raiding or magical ritual attacks. These forts help even more because you can safely build a lab inside and use one of the magical shielding spells to make it harder for your enemies to remove your income through more subtle rituals. Mage forts are usually built deep within your territory, and they don't care about any of the normal criteria of increasing your income or making troops. They are built purely to increase the number of mages per turn you can make. Every fort you make will increase the number of mages that you can build per turn. This is extremely important to the game, as every mage you make is another that can do research for you or join your armies to help you win battles, which becomes more and more important as you get into the mid and late game. So, let's go into this game that I've set up as Middle Age Ulm. In this game we built quite a few fortresses of varying types in order to demonstrate what I mean about fort placement. So here in the Troll Woods, this fort is mostly here just to produce mages. It's simple, it's safe in my lands, so I can recruit mages here without worrying about attacks, so they can research or move to my fortresses close to the front line to help out my armies. In the Cloudbreakers, we can see an example of a defensive fort. It's placed so that enemies from the east have to move through it in order to be able to access any more of my territory to the west. It also covers a little bit more from the southeast, but because of the bridges, that's not ideal. It can still produce a fair number of troops as well as it has high resources and a decent population. The fort in Glanis is an income fort, pure and simple. The population in this province is extremely high, pretty much on par with some capitals. So even though it's next to the fortress and the Cloudbreakers, I want a fortification here to maximise my income in the province and to prevent the enemy from getting it. I do like my money after all. In comparison, the fortress here in Mag is a troop production fortress. It has a lot of connections to a lot of provinces, has really high resources and a decent enough population that has enough recruitment points in order to produce the number of troops that I need. It also doubles as a defensive fort as it covers the west side of my nation, as they have to move through it in order to get further north. The fortress in the Og Woods is purely a defensive fort. It's there to cover the throne to stop enemies from easily taking it. It also covers the gateway in this province, as well as the other numerous bridges surrounding it to try and cut down on the enemy's ability to walk into my lands. Remember when building forts that every single time you start a new fort, it takes 5 months to build and probably will cost you somewhere in the range of 1,000 gold. These are not cheap infrastructure to spam out. If you do have the money to put them out or use the magical rituals to create fortifications, try and keep this in mind for when you put down your forts. You want to make sure they're in a useful enough place and you can use them to support your growing nation in defense, mage recruitment, and troop recruitment. Okay, that was a dive into fortress mechanics. I hope that was helpful to you. Please leave a comment if you'd like to see anything else in this quick tip series or anything else you'd like me to cover. And until next time, take care.